college football bowl season began last night for the American Athletic Conference, and it wasn't pretty, as SMU was destroyed by Louisiana Tech 51-10 in the Mustangs' first game following the loss of head coach Chad Morris to Arkansas. We have 6 more AAC games left, including Memphis playing at home in the Liberty Bowl for the first time. We'll break down all the remaining AAC bowl games as we go one-on-one with Brian Moss, publisher of TigerSportsReport.com, on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's December 21st, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN Meeting Room as we talk Memphis Tigers football and AAC football. Again, that's the American Athletic Conference with Brian Moss. Brian was with us about a month ago, and we were hoping to get him back again. And Memphis, of course, doesn't have their bowl game for another week or so. Actually, December the 30th, so still some time before that game. But a bunch of AAC teams are going to be taking in action before that. So we wanted to get Brian on and go over all those games. So, Brian, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us today.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, Brian. So, that was a stinker yesterday. You know, this is the thing about college football bowl games, that this is the part of it that just isn't really interesting, fun. Look, of course, you want to be on the side of the 51-10 game, but I even think in those situations, it's just like, I mean, we all know Louisiana Tech in a regular season situation is not going to win that game 51-10. And that's kind of the thing that, to me, kind of takes away from the whole thing about the bowls and the matchups, because you have to guess which teams are either going to be motivated to play or the teams like SMU yesterday that have to deal with their coach leaving.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they weren't really up for it. I mean, they when you take a look at their body language and stuff like that, it just didn't seem like the SMU team, you know, that from earlier in the season. I mean, they really shot themselves in the foot. I mean, would they have like 4 or 5 turnovers in the first half? I mean, they just didn't play SMU football, and it really killed them early on.
Yeah, too bad for the program. Of course, they've been going through so many hard times for so long, and they lose a guy like Morris. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think about the future of this program?
SMU, I mean, it was an interesting hire with Sonny Dykes. I thought they would go a different direction, but okay. Dykes, I mean, he's a decent coach. I mean, he's a pretty good coach. I mean, he did I think wasn't he at Louisiana Tech before?
Yes, he was.
Cal, and
he
did a fantastic job. So I mean, he may be one of those coaches that, you know, he's a great coach in a group of 5, but you know, not so much when you get up there in the Power 5. But you know, they have the you know, talent there. The recruiting base is good. So as long as you have a competent staff, you know, the trajectory for SMU should just arise. I mean, I don't see why it would go back the way it was.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Sonny Dykes is in a really good spot there, and he should do a fine job. So they're of course going to lose Cortland Sutton. There's no reason to believe that Sutton's going to be back. So and he could wind up being the first receiver taken in the draft. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. But he's going to be up there. He's a very talented player. Do you think he's the most talented player in the conference?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I mean, there's we go to Memphis, Riley Ferguson, Anthony Miller. I mean, Miller outperformed Sutton this year, but you know, Sutton's a great player. I wouldn't say he's the best player, but he's definitely top 5.
All right. Now, the game that you're, of course, covering for Memphis football is going to be the Liberty Bowl. And this is, you know, I'm kind of surprised in one way that we haven't seen Memphis play in this game before. But like we discussed the last time, it's not like Memphis has had a tremendous run recently of being in all sorts of bowl games. So I guess we can understand why that's the case. But that should sell some tickets. And then you take a look at the fact that they're taking on an Iowa State team that's had a heck of a season. This is definitely one of those games that I'm interested in watching.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great matchup. I mean, if you first look at it, I mean, you can see 10-2, you know, Memphis against 7-5 Iowa State. You know, you have to look past the records, because those 5 losses for Iowa State for a combined, I think, 25, 26 points. So, I mean, they're basically 4 touchdowns away from being undefeated this year. I mean, they played folks well and tight. So, and in Memphis, I mean, high-flying offense against Iowa State, tough defense. I mean, it's really going to be an exciting game to watch. And yeah, both schools have sold out their allotment for tickets. I mean, this should be a pretty close to a sellout Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I think it should be interesting. I mean, Memphis is about a 3-point favorite. I guess it makes sense because of where they're at. I think this was I will say, I think this was a neutral site. I believe Iowa State should be the favorite in this game, especially Big 12. Like you said, they've had a big year. They were able to re-sign Matt Campbell, so he's going to be around for a while, which was a great thing for them. But, for Memphis to get the home field edge here, should be significant. And what I also like about this matchup is at least we know, as I said before, you have to guess sometimes when you think that teams are going to be prepared or even motivated to play. That's not going to be the case in this game. I don't think we'd have to worry about any motivation here with Memphis playing at the Liberty Bowl for the first time and Iowa State after the fantastic year knowing that Campbell's going to return. You know exactly how important this game is for them as they look forward to an even better year next year. So we should get the best of both of these teams in this game.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, because I mean Iowa State, they're looking at Memphis. They're it's not a lesser opponent because they can look at it and be like, hey, they're the 20th ranked team in the country right now. They're 10-2. They have a high flying offense. So defensively, you have something to prove. We want to shut down this high flying offense. And Memphis, when you take a look, I mean, they're undefeated at home this year, and the Liberty Bowl is where they play. So they want to remain undefeated. So there's a lot, on the line for both teams.
Yeah, and if you take a look here, injury-wise, how is the secondary for Memphis? I read somewhere that Josh Perry and Jonathan Cook are a little banged up.
A little bit, but they seem to be okay. I think they'll be fine. It's one good thing about the last game of the season and then having a bowl game a little bit later than what Memphis is used to, is you have time to recover. So I think they'll be fine, and no other lagging injuries. I mean, everything seems to be pretty healthy for the Tiger team.
We talked about when we had you on the show last time about that Central Florida matchup. How disappointing was it for Memphis to lose that game in the way that they did? That was a fantastic football game.
Oh, it was a great game. I mean, the Memphis players, I mean, they really truly left everything all out on the field. They really wanted that. They wanted to go to to the Peach Bowl, but it just didn't happen. I mean, but they fought, tooth and nail all the way to the end. I mean, you take a look at that last play. I mean, the receiver was up. I think it was Miller was open. It just, the receiver got blocked into where the pass was going. So I mean, he basically blocked the defender into the interception. So it's just one of those plays. But man, that was a great game. When you looked at the South Florida and Central Florida game, you're like, man, how can that be topped? I mean, I think the AAC championship game really did top that. I mean, double overtime. I mean, it was fantastic from beginning to end.
Yeah, and Anthony Miller, of course, made some big plays in the game. You mentioned him, and this is it for Anthony Miller. So, and of course, we'll probably see him. I'm assuming. I don't know. Did he already get an invite to the Senior Bowl?
He did. Which one of the bowl games? I can't remember. Him and Riley Ferguson got invited as well.
Okay.
I just can't remember exactly which bowl game. I mean, if it's the Shrine Game or Senior Bowl. But yeah, they did get invited. It's just not the same one, so they'll be in different bowl games.
Yeah. All right. And then so they're gonna have a couple more opportunities to showcase their skills. And by the way, I mentioned Jonathan Cook because Cook and who else is it? Jannard Avery. Those are a couple of the top guys to keep an eye on defense for Memphis.
Yeah, I would say Jannard Avery. I mean, he's been a beast all year. He's right there at middle linebacker. I mean, just a real hoss. I mean, the kid to look for. I mean, he's a true freshman and has not played like a true freshman. Is T.J. Carter at cornerback. I mean, the kid has been outstanding. Tied the freshman record, 4 interceptions. No, 5. I think he broke it. I think 5 interceptions. He's been playing lights out. So I mean, but overall defense. I mean, Memphis. Stats-wise, they're not that great. I mean, they're 122nd in the nation against the pass. So I think for Iowa State, I think they want to try to exploit that. But Memphis has improved from game 1 to the last game. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, defensively, Memphis will have to shore up some things.
All right, and of course for Iowa State, a couple of players to keep an eye on that game. I mean, I really like their sophomore running back David Montgomery. I think he's going to be somebody that people are going to be finding out a lot more of in the next year or two, depending if he leaves after next year. But I just love his elusiveness. Of course, maybe he's being overshadowed a bit. He's not at the big program in the Big 12, but he's somebody to keep an eye on. And then one more game to go for Alan Lazard, and he's had a terrific career for the Cyclones at wide receiver. So Alan Lazard is another player to keep an eye on in the game offensively. And if you want to root for somebody like a lunch pail kind of jack of all trades kind of guy that you just know is going to wind up doing something at the next level, if it's special teams or whatever, that's that kid Joel Lanning, the converted quarterback playing linebacker for Iowa State.
Yeah, he's been fantastic all year. I mean, that defense, man, that's why I'm so excited about this matchup, because I mean, Iowa State, I mean, when you take a look at all their games, they don't get blown out.
No.
I mean, they're in every single game. I think their worst loss is by 10, I think. If I have to go back and look at the schedule, I mean, they don't get blown out. I mean, yeah, they don't put up a lot of yards. I think they only have 389 yards per game compared to Memphis's 548. But they do play teams tough, and it's hard nosed. It's not a typical, in my opinion, it's not a typical Big 12 offense.
No,
they don't throw a lot of points. But man, like I keep saying, they play teams tough. They grind it out, and what a game we're going to have.
Yeah, and also I don't know if we know yet who's going to be a quarterback for Iowa State. If they lost Park, Kyle Kemp, the senior, came in and actually did a better job than Park. They got on a roll. His first start was the Oklahoma win. And so keep that in mind. This is an Iowa State team that beat the one of the teams playing in the Final Four. That's how talented this Iowa State team is. And then he got hurt. The redshirt freshman Zeb Nolan got an opportunity to play some. So they've kind of both played a little bit the last couple of games of the season. I have no idea if they've made any announcements yet who's going to be the starting quarterback, but we might see both kids in the game. I don't know if you've heard anything.
No, I haven't heard anything, but if you're an Iowa State fan, you kind of want Kemp in there. I mean, he's been fantastic.
I agree.
13 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. I mean, even as a team, they don't turn it over a lot. I don't think they've given up a fumble all year. But yeah, that Kemp kid, I think he's going to be he's definitely the quarterback you want if you're an Iowa State fan.
All right, now the champs of the conference, Central Florida, still undefeated. They're going to play in the Peach Bowl, going up against an Auburn team that was 1 win away from playing in the playoffs. Auburn's a 10-point favorite in this game, and of course Scott Frost is gone, but he will coach the game. So that is a rare thing to happen, but you do understand why he wants to coach the game. They're undefeated. He wants to finish the job. Woody, how do you think that they're going to handle that?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's another game, in my opinion, that is a great offense against a great defense. But I mean, going along when you heard the Scott Frost rumors, I mean, you expected, and everyone expected for the play of the Knights to fall off. You expected them to stumble at some point, and they haven't. I mean, they just kept playing well, and it doesn't seem like any of this, the rumors now that he's actually gone, it doesn't seem that it affected them at all.
That's true.
So I mean, that's surprising. That's surprising to me that any time throughout history you've seen where a coach leaves or the rumors start to kick in. Memphis experienced that with Justin Fuente. Houston experienced that with their coach Herman. There's a fall off, but so far the UCF has not fallen off. They haven't stumbled. So I'm really interested to see how they play now that he's officially gone, and pretty much taking the whole staff with him. And it just, there's a lot of recruiting wise. Scott Frost going after the same recruits that's already committed to Central Florida. So there's a lot of things in the background that's like, man, why is this guy still coaching Central Florida?
Yeah.
In the game. So I don't know, maybe just to go, try to go undefeated, but will everything gel? Was this the game that they finally stumbled? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, you would think that if this was a bigger program, that this wouldn't happen. But that's my guess, is that maybe Central Florida is going, look, this is maybe they feel this is the best chance for them, because look what just happened last night. I mean, you lose your coach completely, and then maybe it goes really bad, and maybe they feel the best chance to win this game is if Scott Frost is on that sideline. And why wouldn't you want, as a program, as a university, why wouldn't you want Scott Frost on the sideline? Marketing wise, it is better for them.
Yeah, no, I could see that as well. It's just a weird
unusual.
Situation.
Yes, it is unusual.
Definitely unusual.
Yes.
But either way, it's going to be a great game.
It should be.
I mean,
yeah.
I think, with was it Andrew Killings, mentioned about their speed, that Auburn hasn't seen anything like it. I think that may have woken up or got the attention of Auburn players. I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, what are you doing? Just stay low, go into the game, and then show them what you got. Don't give them any ammunition. Because Auburn, losing out on the chance of going to the Final Four. Now all of a sudden you give them some billboard material to like, oh, okay, now we're interested in this game. I don't know. I wouldn't have said what he said, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's the thing you don't know. We have no idea if Auburn, after playing in all those big games and then coming out on the losing end in the last one, do they look at this game with this team that really, to them, okay, they're undefeated, but it's Central Florida, we don't really care, there's no motivation for them? And is it one of those games like we saw in 2013 when Baylor was a 16-point favorite against Central Florida, and Blake Bortles and Central Florida upset Baylor in that game? So Central Florida just a 10-point dog in this one. It looks like Kerryon Johnson's going to be okay for the game. He's going to have all that time to heal, so that's bad news for Central Florida. I can't imagine Central Florida is going to be able to stop Auburn. I mean, Auburn should be able to run all over them, I would think. So the question then is like we talked about with Auburn's defense, how difficult will it be? Will they be able to get up for this game? Because defensively, they're not going to be at a home game, so they're not going to have like that home field advantage. So there's that. Again, the motivation, the time off, and does that play on the defense? And because they don't want to get into a high scoring game. They want to be able to shut Central Florida down and win this game ugly and win this game easy. But if this is one of those 40 games in the 40s, that's exactly where Central Florida wants it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, look at their last couple of games. South Florida, Memphis, all of them was 40s, 50s. I mean, that's for Central Florida to win this game. Auburn needs to really lose it for themselves.
Yes.
I mean, just if Auburn's at their best and Central Florida's at their best, I don't think anyone besides a diehard Central Florida fan would think that Central Florida would win. So Central Florida needs to keep this score up there. Score early and often. If they stumble out of the gate early, I'm not sure with Auburn's defense that Central Florida can get back into the game. So, yeah, I think Central Florida definitely needs to get on the board early and often.
Yeah, to me, it's just a guess game. You're either going to guess that Auburn's up for it or not, and that's it. And if you're right and they're up for it, then Auburn should win this game. But if they're not up for it, Central Florida could be a nice underdog play. All right, now there's a game going on tonight if you're listening to this show live. So that's another AAC team, and that is Temple. And Temple is taking on FIU in the Bat Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl in St. Petersburg. It used to be called the St. Petersburg Bowl. They play there every year. And you've got Butch Davis and all of his experience as a head coach going up against Jeff Collins in his first year as a head coach. So definitely you got to give an edge to FIU there. Temple's the 7-point favorite. And FIU coming out of the Conference USA. Let's start with the team in your conference, Temple. Talk a little bit about what you think we might see tonight. They're not a sexy offensive team, of course. Defense ruled today under Matt Rule, no pun intended. Last year, that's why he got the job at Baylor. But Collins has taken over. He's another defensive guy. But again, they don't have the talent as well, which is why they've dropped off a little bit. What do you think about how this team has played this year?
Yeah, I think if Temple's going to win this game, they'll definitely do it on defense. And their defensive ends, Jacob Martin and Sharif Finch, Martin has 8 sacks. Finch has 7.5 sacks. I mean, that's going to be the key for Temple. Can they slow down FIU? Because FIU can put up some yardage. But yeah, defensively, it's got to be, in my opinion, a low-scoring game for Temple to win. I mean, they've been pretty decent. Both teams are 3-2 in their last 5. But you know, Temple has been more impressive in their last 5, in my opinion, than FIU. But defensively, I think they got to keep the score low for Temple to win.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen their quarterbacks? I mean, I've seen them a little bit this year. And look, they definitely had a drop off a quarterback with Walker leaving. It looks like the backup has actually played pretty well recently, but nothing that should scare you. But then again, FIU is not FAU.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be low scoring. I mean, you're going to have to score some points. I mean, like Markey for Temple. I mean, 9 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, they're not the most talented team, but I mean, they can beat you. I mean, Tulsa is a high scoring team, even though they hadn't had a great year. But Temple beat them. Temple beat Cincinnati. Temple beat Navy, which was a little bit of a shock. So, I mean, they can beat you, but it's going to be a low-scoring game if Temple's going to win.
Yeah, so, and you've got Frank Newtile. So Frank Newtile and Marchie are the 2 quarterbacks at Temple. And then for FIU, you've got Magoo. And, you know, he's actually played really well over his last several games. And that's the thing to keep an eye on with FIU, which is why if you're looking at another one of these potential upsets, I don't think FIU is a bad play, even though Owens, their top receiver, has been out. Some of these other guys have picked up the slack for FIU, some of their younger receivers. So their offense has definitely looked better recently. So maybe you can have yourself a pretty good game tonight. FIU and Temple. The game is in Florida, so we'll see. Even though a completely different location on the west coast of Florida compared to the east coast of where FIU is located in Miami. All right, let's go to the other game. One of the other games in the AAC, South Florida. And, of course, the Bulls, the last time we saw them play, they had that exciting loss to Central Florida. And this is it for Flowers, a quarterback for South Florida. So this is his last game. And we'll see exactly how things go for him as they take on Texas Tech in the Birmingham Bowl. South Florida is a 3-point favorite in this game. South Florida has actually been in this game 2 other times, and they've won both games. They won the first ever bowl game here in 2006, and they won here last year in overtime, beating South Carolina. Look, Texas Tech is kind of, I don't know what to expect from them too much because they don't have as potent as an offense with Pat Mahomes as they, of course, had last year. They're coming off the win over Texas, which is nice. But I kind of like South Florida in this game. I mean, Flowers, I like him better at quarterback. And I just kind of feel like maybe South Florida might have maybe they've got a little bit more speed in this game that might work to their advantage.
Yeah, I think Flowers is going to have a phenomenal game. Texas Tech gave up a lot of yardage. They gave up 434 yards per game. I mean, they just have a hard time stopping folks. And just the dynamic that Quentin Flowers is. I mean, he can throw, he can beat you with his arm, he can beat you with his legs. I mean, he's the leading passer and leading rusher for South Florida. I see South Florida winning. You know, in my opinion, I mean, when I look at this, I can say pretty easily that I think South Florida could win by 17, 20 points.
Really? Okay. So you're pretty confident about this one. All right.
This one I'm pretty confident, only because how South Florida plays offensively, and when I just take a look at I always go by the last 5 games. When you go the last 5 games, just Texas Tech. I mean, they're 2-3 in their last 5 games, and some games they look really good, and some games they look really, really bad.
Yeah.
And against the team speed with South Florida, I just think South Florida will win it pretty easily.
Yeah, they've definitely been very inconsistent, Texas Tech, so you don't really know what you're going to get there. So, yeah, I agree with you. I like South Florida in that game. Moving on. By the way, you liked any word yet on how South Florida has taken to Charlie Strong?
I mean, they love the guy. I mean, I think it's a great fit for them. Now I think South Florida is going to be in a position of, can we hold on to him? Because, he's recruiting well. He obviously he's a good coach, and he may be one of those coaches like we were talking about Sonny Dykes. A great group of five coach may not be a great coach for the Power Five, and which there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
I mean, you could still have a great career, but he's doing well, and he's really doing well in that area. I mean, the area loves him, the players love him.
All right, next game is Houston in the Hawaii Bowl. This will be on Christmas Eve, and this game used to be on Christmas, right? A few years back.
I believe so.
Yeah. I used to like that when they had a college football game on Christmas. I know why they don't do it anymore, but I used to like that because I think right now for sports fans, all you got is NBA games. And come on, I mean, give me some football, will you please?
Football. I mean, I'd watch football over basketball any day.
Yeah, so Houston is a 2.5-point favorite against Fresno. And for Houston, Major Applewhite in his first season taking over for Tom Herman. How has that gone?
It's been an interesting year for Houston. I mean, they, on one hand, they upset South Florida, but they lose to Memphis.
Tulane.
And it's just they lost to Tulane. That was a terrible loss for Houston. So they're going through some growing pains. I think they'll be fine. They'll start contending for an American Conference championship again in the years to come. Just this year that transition was a little bit awkward there for a while, but still not a bad team. But they're going to go against a Fresno team that, I think this is another great game, and my early gut tells me that Fresno will pull it out in a close one.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the season for Fresno this year. This is a program that hasn't gone anywhere the last 3 or 4 years, and then Jeff Tedford comes into town, and 1 year, one win team last year, and they went all the way to the Mountain West Conference championship game to take on Boise State. And they they were winning that game. That game they had in control. They just couldn't get over the top when they were leading the game in the second half. They just couldn't put that last score on the board. And Boise just hung in there. And then they were able to score that late touchdown to beat Fresno. But I like what Fresno's done this year as well. I think Tedford's an excellent coach. He's got the edge on Major Applewhite in his first season at Houston, so he's got the coaching edge. And also keep an eye on Linnell Bonner because that game is going to be taking place again on Christmas Eve. So you want to know whether Bonner's going to be in the game because Bonner's kind of iffy right now to play in the game from what I hear.
Yeah, I haven't heard any much on that as well. But all these American Conference games, besides that first one last night, should be excellent games. Great matchups.
All right, and then the final game is Navy coming off the loss to Army. We always enjoy watching the Army-Navy game, and with the snow, that was quite a thriller. So, but look, Navy just hasn't really been the same team the second half of the season with Zach Abbey kind of limping around. I understand that their number 2 quarterback has done a pretty good job, but Zach Abbey's a better player in my mind. And then you also have the other injury situation. I know their fullback is banged up, so you want to keep an eye on that. He did not play in the Army game, and we know how important that position is. For the triple option. But this Navy team is again, it's a program that is used to winning. They are at home. That's an edge. They're a 1-point favorite. They're in Annapolis. If anything that to me is going to make me think Navy could win the game is the fact that they are going to have the home field advantage. But I just really talking about another head coach that I really enjoy watching and see how he might be turning that program around. That's Bronco Mendenhall, what he's doing with Virginia. And Kurt Bankert has had some good moments this year. I think Virginia is clearly the better team, but the question will be, can Navy use that home field edge in the Military Bowl? They're a 1-point favorite over the Cavs.
Yeah, and both teams are going into the game 1-4 in their last 5. Both of them are on a 3-game losing streak. And it's just, the only game that out of the last 5 that Virginia has won is against Georgia Tech, who has that triple option. So,
Great
You know,
point.
I give, when you take a look at it, I give a slight edge to Virginia because they've already beat. They're used to a triple option. They play it every year. But then you go, you know, Navy's at home, you know, that home field advantage. So, I mean, it's really, you know, as the line indicates, it's almost a pick 'em game. But, you know, which team is going to be up for it? You know, on paper, I think you have to give the edge to Virginia. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Navy won, but I think Navy's more banged up, and I don't know if they can overcome that.
Yeah, and Virginia definitely has the top pro prospects in the game. Again, Bankert should be a nice little middle round draft pick. Somebody who could be a sleeper starter down the road in the NFL. You've got some really good defenders, Micah Kaiser and Quinn Blanding. So these are guys, these are seniors playing in their last game, and also throwing Andrew Brown. So they got some really talented players there for Virginia. And by the way, they're going to have some motivation too. Keep in mind that Virginia has not played in a bowl game since 2011, and they've not won a bowl game since 2005. So the motivation factor should be there for Virginia.
Definitely, if Navy to win, they're going to have to do what they did, you know, against Army, even though they didn't beat Army. But sustained long drives, because when you're watching that Army-Navy game, you're like, man, there might be only 8 possessions the entire game, you know. But yeah, I think for Navy, keep Virginia's offense off the field. I mean, that would be the key for Navy.
All right, now before I let you go, Brian, what about the conference next year? Of course, they've the big loss being Scott Frost, the conference champions. So that could have a lot of impact. You've got South Florida with Flowers gone. So right there, just in that one division, you've got some big answers that need to be filled. You got Riley Ferguson and Anthony Miller leaving for your team at Memphis. You got Chad Morris leaving SMU. So it looks like it's going to be a pretty wide open conference heading into next season. Can you make any early observations on who you think the favorite should be next year?
I think, I mean, an early favorite would be, in my opinion, would be Central Florida, even though they're getting a new coach. Mackenzie Milton is still going to be there.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, as far as the East, I think you have to give it to Central Florida. But, you mean, watch out for Cincinnati. They're recruiting well. They didn't have a great year this year.
Really?
But they got some talent coming back. And, I mean, they're recruiting very well. So
okay.
It'll be interesting to see, for me, can they put it together? That would be the key for Cincinnati. Can they put everything together? They got the talent there. But Luke Fickell is starting to turn it around, starting to get some, you know, some big-time players there. If he can turn it around, I'd say a dark horse would be Cincinnati, but I think Central Florida would definitely be for the East. In the West, even though Memphis is losing, you know, Riley Ferguson, Anthony Miller, they have talent like they've never had before at Memphis. Now, would they be an early favorites? I don't think so. I think the West is completely open. I think Houston, you know, can you know, come back and jump that spot over Memphis. SMU, I think, is going to be down. Navy should be better next year. But in my opinion, it'd be Memphis, Houston, or Navy for the West. But still exciting year. I'm not sure it'll be as strong of a year as it was this year.
You know, I don't know when, but at some point, I think I really do believe that Willie Fritz is going to get the job done at Tulane. I don't know if it's going to take him 3 or 4 more years. It might. But I think he's a very good coach, and I've already started seeing them show some sort of improvement. I mean, they only lost by 6 to South Florida. We talked about they beat Houston. They really came so close to beating SMU and getting into a bowl game. I mean, the way they lost that game was just so heartbreaking for them on that last call. Where Banks, they said Banks wasn't in. And it was like one of those things where whatever they called on the field was going to stick, and they say he didn't make it in as far as the last play. They had no timeouts left, so that's how close they came to a bowl game. So I think Willie Fritz has got something going on in Tulane. What about Randy Edsall? Do you think Randy Edsall in a few years is going to be able to get the job done at Connecticut like he did the first time?
I think it's going to be a longer of a process for him than the first go around. They need a lot of help. I see what Randy Edsall is at is how Justin Fuente at Memphis took over. It took Fuente, 3-4 years to really get it going for Memphis. And I see the same thing. I think it's going to be 3-4 years before Randy Edsall can get it back up there. And he's proven he did it before. He could definitely do it again. I just think it's going to take a little bit.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Brian. Again, for Memphis Tigers fans, they can go to tigersportsreport.com on the Rival Sports Network. Next up after this game is going to be basketball for you?
Yeah, basketball's in swing. Right now, the Tigers, I believe, are 8-3 on the season. They just beat Siena. So a lot of good things. There's a mixed bag of nuts for Memphis basketball because there's a lot of people that do not like Tubby, and there's a lot of people that do like Tubby. Just the fan base, they just want to win.
Uh-huh.
Basketball has been great for so long, and it's not great right now. They just want to win, and hopefully Tubby can turn it around so that fan base can be united.
Brian, I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again maybe sometime before the draft.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brian. All right, that's Brian Moss covering Memphis Tigers football. And by the way, we're going to see you at 6 o'clock. That's our next show on the Our Lads Football Network. Again, 6 o'clock. That is going to be coming up a little bit later on. If you're listening live, that's going to be coming up at about 4 hours from now. So that is our next show here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. Meeting Room Show. Robert Gagliardi is going to join me, senior sports editor and beat writer for Wyoming football and the Mountain West Conference for papers at Laramie and Cheyenne, Wyoming. So we'll talk to him. We've already spoken to him about a month or so ago. We'll get the Josh Allen update and all the Mountain West Conference games. We'll talk to Robert about that at 6 o'clock tonight on the Meeting Room. Our NFL show will return tomorrow, so Tony and I will preview Week 16 in the NFL tomorrow on OFN NFL Preview. So that'll do it for Brian Moss. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room on the Our Lads Football Radio Network, where the NFL – well, actually, it's never too early to think about the NFL Draft. We'll see you next time.